so long. There'll be no more sobbing when he starts throbbing his own sweet song. Wake up, you sleepyheads, get up, get out of bed, cheer up, cheer up.
Hello and welcome to the Red Robin podcast, powered by Budget Ties Auto Centre and 𝗕𝘂𝗄𝗎𝗂𝗁𝗲 Chartered Accountants, the independent 𝗕𝘂𝗄𝗎𝗁𝗲𝗁𝗲 Rovers podcast. Good evening and welcome to the one and only Red Robin Podcast Weekly, the only independent 𝗕𝘂𝗄𝗎𝗁𝗲 Rovers podcast around. So whether you are listening in South Coast or Sydney, this is the place for you. And what a week it has been. Well, it's not even been a week since our victory over Batley. There's been some incredible goings on at 𝗕𝘂𝗄𝗎𝗁𝗲 Rovers. And I tell you what, we always aim to do this podcast in an hour and we always overrun because 𝗕𝘂𝗄𝗎𝗁𝗲 Rovers is a club that is going places. And there is so much that's going on at the moment. I'm delighted to welcome two guests who know the stuff about the Robins. Graham Turner, of course, a podcast regular. Mikey's not been on for a while. Of course, people will recognise him from 𝗕𝘂𝗄𝗎𝗁𝗲 and following 𝗕𝘵𝗋𝗋𝗄𝗏 round the pitch. Mikey, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, mate. Thank you very much for having me back on. I thought you'd forgotten all about me. I was a bit like, what's he doing? But no, it's good to be back, mate. Good to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, I tell you what, Mikey, before we kickstart, there's a lot going on at the club. We're going to come on to it in the podcast. So much going on right now with 𝗕𝘂𝗄𝗎𝗁𝗲 Rovers. But it's great to see someone like you, Mikey. You've been involved with the trust. You've done so much with the foundation. Great to see you volunteering with the club on the pitch, 𝗕𝘂𝗎𝗁𝗲𝗏, etc. I mean, you live and breathe 𝗕𝘂𝗄𝗎𝗁𝗲 Rovers. Honestly, mate, it's great to see you getting involved so much more. And for you personally, it must be fantastic, the experiences you're getting to enjoy.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant, mate. Like when you think about rugby league being like a community game and the way that fans are able to get involved in different ways. Obviously, 𝗕𝘵𝗋𝗋𝗄𝗏, who I've been supporting on a match day, lifelong fan. Rob Chadwick, who does the commentary for 𝗕𝘂𝗎𝗏 TV, lifelong fan. You know, there's a way into the club to be able to support and kind of offer in different ways, which you probably don't get across other sports. So it's great that the opportunity is there for us and those that love 𝗕𝘂𝗄𝗎𝗁𝗲 Rovers.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, to be fair, we put out there earlier on during the week that Craig Shepherd was going to be joining us from the Rovers Foundation. He's unfortunately not able to join us. Hopefully he'll be able to join us very soon. But at the moment, Graham, I mean, we're talking about Challenge Cup victories. We're talking about Wigan Warriors up next. We're talking about six-figure, transfer fees. We're talking about New Zealand internationals. We're talking about Sean Kennedy-Howell staying on as a coach at the club. I mean, wow, what a time to be a Robin. There's plenty going on, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, and evening everybody. And I think, John, it's all really good news as well, and really positive news about taking the club forward. It's not doom and gloom news that's coming out. So I've said it a couple of times this season already on the podcast about riding the wave, and we've got to do that at the minute because everything's looking bright and rosy for us in terms of where we are in the league. We're still in the Challenge Cup competition, favourable home tie in the next round to be able to hopefully progress in that one. Player retentions, player signings coming in, all with one eye on 2024 season. So yeah, what a time to be alive for a Rovers fan at the minute.
Yeah, and it's great to see so many people joining on the live stream, especially on YouTube. Mark Brady, Michael Morton, Bazza, Pete Barley, Don Kirby. But unfortunately, guys, I'm going to call you out now because I'm going to have to initiate an apology. So people who listened to last week's podcast will probably remember when I put the question out there about our the last time a Hull-born halfback partnership featured for the Robins. And I mentioned the names Mikey Lewis and 𝗕𝘵𝗋𝗋𝗄𝗏. All credit to them for what they've done for the Robins so far. But of course, when I posed the question, who was the last Hull-born halfback partnership to represent the Robins, the easy answer that nobody picked up at the time was Jordan Abdul and Mikey Lewis, who started the season for Rovers. We had all kinds of answers coming in. Even my partner on the time at the podcast, he didn't even pick up on it. I I got a text off Mike Carter, didn't you, Mike? You sent a message to me calling it out, and that was literally one of the biggest brain farts I had. And to be fair, I think I might be bringing out a bloopers edition of the Red Robin podcast very shortly.
We should call it Red Robin Botches.
Yeah. Well, all right, mate. All right. Oh, that's it.
He's got it written already.
To be fair, John, I've done a little bit of research for you on this front as well, because I was quite interested by this. So one thing that wasn't mentioned, actually, and this was mentioned to me by one of my mates in the pub, I'll give Cam a shout out because he was one that picked up on this, but there was 𝗕𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗲𝗃 and Craig Hall in the 𝗕𝗵𝗿𝗃 defeat back in 2013 when we played the Wigan Warriors. That was a full-born halfback partnership. And then I did a little bit of looking into myself, and I'm going to bring some notes up here. So since 2020, when Mikey Lewis and Jordan Abdul first played together, ironically was also against the Wigan Warriors on the 3rd of September 2020. They've played 27 times between then and obviously the present day. The club's played 66 games in that time, so it's approximately 42% of the fixtures between then and now that those have partnered up. But the interesting thing is, they've only managed to do it 8 times in a season. Now, that brings up a different query that I kind of think about, where you look at your halfbacks being your key players, and your first choice halfbacks, they've only played 41 games across that period of time. So 8 times in 2021 and 8 times in 2023 so far. So when we can get them two back on the field together, I think that'll be massive for us.
Yeah, well, that begs another question as well. I'm not going to ask it at the moment. We'll see how we go. But halfback partnerships, like you said, are so important, and we're so reliant on getting your first choice ones out there. So we'll see how that goes. Look, boys, Friday night, Rovers v Batley Bulldogs. I'll come to you, Graham. What was your expectations going into that game?
Expectation was a win for definite. A solid performance that maintained intensity levels, attitudes in attack and defence from the week before in defeat to allow us to keep that momentum going without seeing a drop in standards. I think everybody, Rovers fans, would have expected the positive win. But for me, it was an extension of what went on mostly on Friday night before that against Warrington. And I think that's now where our attitude and our effort levels are at. That's our start point, and that was pleasing to see that it wasn't. Oh, it's only Batley. Let's take it easy. There was none of that.
Yeah, and Mike, I mean, when you see the starting lineup for the Robins, Willie Peters wasn't taking Batley lightly, and I mean, it's tough, isn't it? Because this was a Batley team coming into the game on a good run of form, 5th in the championship. Some great results for them this season. But let's be honest, it's tough for a part-time team. A lot of them blokes have probably been doing work that day, full-time jobs, to come up against a side like Rovers who were playing so well this season, and also mainly first choice players. It is a tough ask for a side like Batley to come in and try and spring a surprise. It's not like football, is it? Like the FA Cup, and where teams can sort of get by 90 minutes of football, but one shot, one goal wins the game. Rugby league's not like that, is it?
No, and the opportunities for upsets are a lot difficult, a lot more harder, as you said there. And I think the way that Rovers approached the game was pretty good, because success breeds confidence and confidence breeds success. So to get back onto, winning ways after the defeat at Warrington, and even though it was in good circumstances, really, if you're going to talk about defeats, it really does look like we've found ourselves into a position now where we've got that confidence to be able to go and put, this kind of level of points on a team like Batley. You think about the game itself, it would have been quite easy for us to put a string of kids out and just maybe, just scrape a win, or like we've seen in the past. But no, we put them to the sword. We've scored 50 points, and we probably ended the game with the strongest bench that we're going to see all season. Yeah,
and Graham, you saw towards the end of the game, didn't you, when Willie Peters started resting, certain players started coming off the pitch. Sam Wood, half back again. It's a role he's becoming. I mean, I didn't see that coming. Also, a kicker as well. Came up with 2 conversions. But Willie Peters had that luxury of being able to rest players. The job was done. And what you would say is, Graham, it was a very professional performance. It's easy to say. I mean, as soon as they went in with that try after the first minute, you're almost going, that's the game gone. You shouldn't, it's almost arrogance, I suppose, to a certain extent, but you felt that just the way they scored that try, you could almost just see the rest of the game unfolding like it did.
Yeah, and I think after that, we were relentless in attacking. It wasn't a case where we could score every single set we had, but it wasn't far off that. It looked like we could do. A bit better execution, etc. We maybe would have done, but you're right. The game was probably gone after 20 minutes, so it'd been very easy to put the cue on the rack and just rest it up. And we didn't. We kept going. We kept the same attitude, desire, etc. in attack and defence. Again, to keep any team to a 0 in rugby is a good effort defensively, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of pride in the 0 as much as there was in the 50 points as well. But yeah, second half, when you saw those interchanges coming in to the key personnel, that was definitely one eye on not wanting to get up any silly little injuries in advance of Thursday night.
Yeah, and Mike, I think to be fair, I think from the Robins, there was a certain amount of respect shown to Batley. There was no like crazy plays. There was no really daft offloads. There was a respect shown to Batley, what they deserve for who they are, the club they are, where they are in the championship. And that's why I said it's great. I think it was just a really professional performance from Rovers. And what really showed me, it was, the respected Batley was the team that Willie Peters put out, because quite rightly, like, they could have put academy players out, they could have put younger players out, but that was probably the strongest team we had. Be interesting, Mikey, to get your opinion on how PLT did. I wonder now if he's not a fullback. I wonder if he's actually been sort of moved into that position in halfback, because Willie Peters also said, hasn't he, in training, where when they do the captain's run, they put PLT in the opposition team because of the way he plays, his unpredictability. And I think actually he's moved away from being a fullback, from what he did for 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗲𝗁 and what he did in his early years, and now actually he could be the next cab off the rank for the 6 and 7 spot.
Yeah, quite possibly. You look at his physique and you probably think he's possibly more suited to the position in the halves. Obviously, Mikey's got a couple of years on him, but if you go back to 2019 and look for a photo or a video of Mikey Lewis and then look at a photo or a video of him now, his physique has changed so much in that time. He's got much more broader shoulders and he has kind of bulked out a little bit. And I think that's probably the next position that, PLT needs to sort of step up in his development. And obviously, as he grows into his body and as his body grows, we will see a little bit more from him, in that sense. So, yeah, it's definitely really interesting. Obviously, we've seen links to other different fullbacks. Obviously, we've got Peta Hiku, who we'll talk about in a little bit, I'm sure. So there could be different alternatives that are used down the line there. But just another word on the Batley game. You look at the fact that we've absolutely put them to the sword and we've tied it up. Let's just compare that to St Helens. Now, St Helens obviously played Halifax. They were away from home, so they did have that slight disadvantage. But you look at Morgan Knowles making a stupid mistake in the 79th minute, which in a game that was already won has now cost him the next 2 league games. It could have been quite easy for something like that to happen to Rovers in a position where they've not necessarily put the opposition to the sword. They're still battling away towards the end of the game, and now they've lost a key player for 2 games. Yeah.
And of course we saw Kennedy will now miss out. Reece Kennedy will miss out on the next game for the Robins. He copped a 1-game ban. I mean, that Morgan Knowles tackle, so needless. I saw some St Helens fans put on, he's almost missed nearly half the games that St Helens will play this season. It's value for money. You're not getting any. You want your best players out, and injuries yet, but through crazy decisions like that is absolutely unbelievable. I saw the tackle. I've got no sympathy really. I think he knew what he was doing, and he's copped the ban on the back of it. Graham for the Robins. Ethan Ryan scored a hat-trick. It's not been officially announced yet that he's joining the Salford Red Devils. In the media, obviously, they've made the assumption that he's signing for them. But he's doing a good job at the moment, considering he's leaving, and he's a player who's knuckled down and took his opportunity when it's been presented to him.
Absolutely, and that's all a professional can do. He's had to wait patiently for opportunities. He's probably seen what was his position last year and the one before taken away from him with other players coming in and owning that shirt for a while, and he's not been able to force his way through for whatever reason, whether it's coach doesn't like him particularly in that position, thinks he's got better strength elsewhere. But yeah, we talked a few weeks ago when we knew that 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏 was going to be out for a period of time and said this is an opportunity to give an extended run to Ethan Ryan, almost put himself in the shop window if he wants to do that, if he's not being retained for next season. And so far, I think in the games that we've seen him, he's performed admirably in both of those. I don't think it's probably fair to say he's not put a foot wrong in either game that is covered in there, and certainly showed up well in attack of what he can do on the game at the weekend with his hat-trick, fully deserved, and again, hopefully, confidence-wise, inspires him to perform to that high level again this week. And yeah, another hat-trick would be great if he can get one on Thursday night.
Well, yeah, yes, please.
Yeah.
Mikey, I mean, Sam Luckley went in for his try on minute 58. I mean, how great was it to see him rampaging through the middle? And I tell you what, he had some.
How quick was he?
Yeah, he was determined to get that try, Mikey, wasn't he? And Sam Luckley is. Do you know what he's probably epitomises? That thing of if you work hard, you take your opportunity, you get your place in the team, which is very much Willie Peters' mantra at the moment. If you get your place, you've earned it, and if you play well, you're staying there. And Sam Luckley, he's a player this season who has really took his opportunity. He'll be looking forward to hopefully playing at Newcastle again. Obviously, we saw his famous try celebration when he was playing for Salford. He'll be hoping he gets the chance to play there in a couple of weeks. But Sam Luckley, I mean, great try and great to see someone who many people thought would be on the periphery of the team actually take his opportunity and make a stake for the claim for that starting spot or being in the first team squad.
Yeah, I think he might even have an argument for being our most impressive prop so far this year. Obviously, Jesse Simpson's missed a couple of games.
That's a big shout, isn't it?
George King has done very well, but we expect that of him. But if you look at the position that Sam Luckley's put himself in, I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I think he's missed one game this year. He's come off the bench pretty much every week, but Willie Peters times it absolutely perfectly to bring him on so that he has a really good positive impact on the game. So when he does come on, he's put in a position where he can have the most impact. And the way that them wheels was spinning on Friday night, that absolutely reeked of prop forward off the nuddy run. That's exactly what that was. He saw that line and thought, there is no way I'm doing that nuddy run at the end of the year. Get me off it now. And his eyes just lit up and he went across for the try there as well. So another one of our players who's off the nuddy. Not that there's that many left on the list now. I think there's only 7 or 8 players that haven't actually scored a try this season so far.
Well, you're my stat man, mate, so you'll be keeping count. Make sure.
If you want the list, I've got a list.
I mean, it's crazy as well, isn't it, that we've got to this stage of the season and Mikey Lewis and 𝗔𝘅𝗏𝗏 will be the only ever-present players. And we're only, 13 games into the season, I think.
Yeah.
So credit to them. Graham, Ethan Ryan, I mean, Baz has put, I've got a feeling that the Ethan Ryan decision will make a U-turn. The club will make a U-turn and he will stay. Look at Parcell last year. I mean, to be fair, he's right. A lot of rumours around him going to the NRL and then did a massive U-turn and committed to us. Is Ethan Ryan a player that you'd like to keep hold of? Or with the recruitment at the moment, does it almost make it feel like there's no place for him going forward?
Interesting question. I think if you read the next comment from Dawn, that poses an even bigger question to the dilemma. Will the club use Ethan Ryan as leverage to get Tyler Dupree? And I guess we'll come on to that in a little bit, perhaps. But in the fullback position, if we let Ethan Ryan go and we let obviously Ryan 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗏𝗏 retiring, we appear to be light in that particular area of cover.
Yeah.
Now, in Willie Peters' statement, he's identified Peta Hiku for the fullback role. What happens if there's a medium-term injury to him? Where does our cover lie? would it be Mikey Lewis, who's again performed admirably, but then we lose some strength in the halves by doing that? I don't know if we've got natural cover of the right quality that we need for replacement. So you look at that and you think, well, it could be used at cover, but is he only used as a squad player? Is he happy with that? Is he pushing to say, I need to be playing regular first team football? I'm an international player. I want to be playing every week. And obviously he's got to do his bit on the field to force the hand of the coach. But again, it's a flip of a coin. And you can see an argument for both cases of retention because of that provision of cover, but also if he's wanting to seek his opportunities elsewhere, and let's say it's Salford and it helps get the Dupree move over the line, is that going to be good business for Rovers?
Yeah, it is interesting because you do look at that, I posed a question about PLT, about where his role may be for the club and where he might feature for the side. Obviously, you assume he's the cover at fullback. Signed a long-term deal not too long ago, but I do wonder where his position lies. Ethan Ryan leaves. Hiku's coming in. We're going to talk about him very shortly, about what he might bring to the club. But I suppose the here and now is, what he's doing. We've already mentioned he's took his opportunity. He's making a stake. He's making a stake for the claim to be in that starting team. So long may that continue. Ultimately, Mike, I suppose, Rovers 50, Batley 0. It's maybe what a lot of supporters expected to happen. Not many Rovers fans wanted to call it because nobody wants egg on the face, but it probably just shows the level at where we're operating at, where part-time rugby league is, and the difference between the two sides. And I know you referenced the St Helens game. That was a Halifax team, obviously, at the very best. St Helens not obviously doing too great this season, but in the end, it was just a comfortable victory, and no injuries came out of it. Unfortunately, though, Mike, we copped a suspension, and that was probably the worst part of the result.
Yeah, it probably was. But it's going to give somebody like Matty Staunton the opportunity to come into the 17, you'd think. And then that's going to hopefully give him the opportunity to create a shirt for him, which is going to then potentially keep Kennedy out of the game the following week, because that's what we need to do. Yeah. You look at players that have come in. I don't think we've really had anybody that's let us down when you think of players coming in to cover. We've kind of found ourselves in an incredible position where the players that are coming in might even be outperforming the people that have been, originally starting beyond them, and that's then making them up their game. Yeah. So yeah, it'll definitely be quite interesting. And obviously, I've got the comments up as well, and I've just seen the comment there from 𝗕𝗂𝗁𝗲𝗁 saying, "Wondering the last time we managed to nil 3 teams in a season was." Now, I would be underprepared if I didn't know the answer to that coming onto this podcast, because it was something that I looked into. So the last time that Rovers nilled 3 teams in the same season was in 2003. They nilled, Siddle, 28-0, Featherstone, 20-0, and Featherstone also 13-0 in that 03 season. Now, that then made me think, when was the last time they did it as a top flight club? Because obviously in 2003, Rovers were in the second division, or the first division, however you want to call it. The last time we did it in the top flight was 1986, 1987.
Well, Graham will remember it well.
So that was coming.
That was towards the back end of our sort of glory days in the 80s. And then I went one better as well, because I thought, when was the last time we did 4? When was the last time we nilled 4 opposition in the same season? And that was all the way back in 1983-84, which we know that season ended, don't we?
Well, do you know what, mate? It's all right referencing 𝗕𝗂𝗁𝗲𝗁𝗲, but when I posed that question about Mikey Lewis and Jez Litton, he was the first one to answer back with Chesai Hansen and Paul Cook. So it's great that you join us, but I've got no credit to you whatsoever. So he didn't help me out one bit when I posed that question, and he was one of the instigators of why I carried it on. But yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it, mate? I mean, the stats you must pull out. I mean, your spreadsheets must be massive.
Yeah, there's all sorts of information on there. But what it sometimes takes is just that little bit of awareness to think of what to look for, because obviously it's all there. There's like so much information going back all the way to sort of the 1800s, and a lot of it I'll probably never even use. But just every now and again, you can just pull something out in a quiet half an hour on an evening, just have a little look through and see what you can find. It's I just find it fascinating. It's always been something I've been interested in.
I'll tell you what, mate, we're moving slightly off topic and we'll come back on very quickly. Is there someone at the club who collates stats like about stuff? Do you know what I mean? That, as daft as that sounds. So
so the club historian's 𝗕𝘂𝗃𝗄. So Roger does a lot of that information,
right.
Provides it for the club. But the information that I keep, I do it for my own personal sort of gain. Because when I get a shirt or anything, it's easy just to check back and look through my own stats rather than it is bothering somebody else. But yeah, 𝗕𝘂𝗃𝗄's the club historian. He's the one that keeps on top of all that kind of stats and information.
Yeah, and do you know what? That's probably a role that is so underestimated, because when you see on social media the tweets but it's because someone behind the scenes is keeping record of it. Someone's and also they've got to be on the game because you can't get it wrong. Yeah,
I believe that Super League provide clubs with stats and information as well. I believe there's some sort of email or something that goes around on a weekly basis saying if player A makes an appearance this week, it's their 50th in the Super League and things like that. So there is somebody at Super League that keeps that level of stats as well. But there's a lot of pressure that comes with it, because all it takes is for you to click the wrong name or put the wrong name on the team sheet, and that information's wrong forever. So there's a little bit of pressure that comes with it as well.
Yeah. And 𝗕𝘂𝗿𝗀𝗀, who appeared on the podcast for the Warrington game, they work with Super League to supply stats as well. So it's I think Roger actually helps 𝗕𝘂𝗿𝗀. Roger supplies 𝗕𝘂𝗃𝗃 with his stats for 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗃. And I've subscribed, and as you have, John, up to the Rugby League Records Keepers Club. And what I do is I use their information to match mine to make sure that I'm correct. Because it's good just to have some, another set of eyes over things. And then if I've made a mistake, I can see it on there. Or if I think they've made a mistake, then I would reach out to them, which I did with the whole derby last year. Yeah, fantastic. And there is such a layers upon layers upon layers of people who are doing work behind the scenes that on the face of it, it looks obvious and easy, but it takes a lot of time for people to make sure that these things are right. It takes a lot of time to make sure that facts are correct, because when you put something out publicly, you've got to be on it, which is why I delete so many tweets and Facebook message posts, because I put things out and then I check it and then go, oh shit, I've got that wrong. So if you ever see a deleted tweet, it's because I've got it wrong, and someone's either pressed upon me to say no, it was this, or I've actually done some research myself. So right, let's put that Batley game to bed. Of course, Rovers are being drawn at home against Salford in the next round of the Challenge Cup, the quarterfinals. Mike, you might be able to help me out on this. I know the game was scheduled between the 16th and 18th of June. I think the BBC have done their TV picks yet. Today, literally, as we almost came out to do the podcast, has Rovers been selected on Viaplay? Have they selected what day it'll be played yet?
I've not seen or heard anything, but the Viaplay games are the Thursday night, Friday night. So keep your fingers crossed for Friday, because we're away at Catalan, aren't we, on the Saturday? So the Friday would be the better of the two. You can understand why the BBC have chosen the two games. I feel like there was maybe a little bit of an argument for the BBC to pick the York and the League game, because even though there is a potential upset there, it probably won't happen, but there is the potential for, the old cup set happening on the BBC. But, they obviously didn't decide to go ahead with that one. Obviously, that the Viaplay is a subscription service, but there is a free channel. So the game will be replayed over the weekend for anybody wanting to catch it on that. So that's good to know that people will be able to watch it back after being there live.
Yeah, the sensible decision, of course, was to play Rovers on the Friday. It keeps in line with Rovers' decision to play Friday night games. It gives players plenty of recovery after going to Catalan. So a Thursday game would be a bit of a shocker. Hey, let's see what happens. Rugby League, it never fails to surprise. But Salford are up next in the Cup. Many fans are very thankful that we've got a home draw. Salford, of course, won't be an easy team to face, but we'll deal with that as we come close to that game. Graham, Massive news over the weekend. 𝗕𝘂𝗂𝗀𝗃𝗃 Rovers have signed a current New Zealand international, a regular in the NRL, in Peta Hiku. Interestingly, he's played at centre for the Cowboys all season. He can play at centre, wing or fullback. Willie Peters has already nailed the colours to the mast by saying that he's going to be Lachlan Coote's replacement. But what fantastic news it is to be signing a player of that calibre, that standing in the game, a player who played every game in the World Cup for New Zealand. I mean, recruitment-wise, could you ask for any better, really?
I don't think so. I think that's just a massive statement of intent of where the club are now positioned and where we're now heading toward. He didn't just play in the games at the World Cup; he contributed heavily to the games in the World Cup as well. So he's a valued member of that team as well at international level, coming up for best part of 200 games in the NRL again. So he's got huge experience in regular season playoff games as well. So listening to the brief interview that Willie Peters gave, and then the subsequent clip that was put out when the club talked to Peta Hiku, he marked as a fullback. You know, Peters has come out and said that, and when listened to the player, I think he's relishing that opportunity of being more involved. He said, I think were his words, that he wants to be more involved on both sides of the ball. So maybe at centre, if it's not on your side of the field, then you almost are involved, but with potentially every single player attacking wise, you can be involved in that line somewhere. So I think he's got huge experience to bring to the team and the squad for next season. Seasoned international player, huge experience, very similar to the calibre of player that we're going to lose in SKD in terms of where he is in the game. And I think it's an absolutely huge statement from the board and Willie Peters in terms of his recruitment drive of the market we're in for the quality of player now. And you can see that the Coote is an excellent player that we've had a couple of years out of, and if he provides the same, if not better, provision than Coote has, then yeah, we're going to have a real good time watching him play in a red and white jersey over the next few seasons.
Yeah, Mike, I think what was really interesting, what I picked up on was about how he's not coming over, his whole family coming over. It's a transition. Something that Rovers have done really well over the last couple of years about they're not just signing players individually, they're selling the whole family package about how you can come over, enjoy your life in this country. You only had to see when they had the break, in the international break, when the players were going all over Europe, especially the Australians, New Zealand, there was experience in life in the Northern Hemisphere. And I suppose that is the biggest selling point that we've got at the moment. Not just that the club's going places and we're wanting success, but come over here and you'll get to experience a whole new world and bring your family with you because they're part of the journey. And I think that's what helps players be settled when they do come here, because we've seen it previously, Mikey, where players have come over on their own, the families have stayed in Australia, they've been unsettled, and it's just not quite worked out. And at the moment, you'd suggest that the model the club have got seems to be working, and people have sniffed at a longer-term contract, because don't forget, when he comes to Rovers, he'll be 31. He's on a 3-year contract, so by the end of it, he'll be 34. Understandably, some people said, well, God, he's coming to the end of the career. But actually, these could be the best years of his career in a settled club with his family around him. And this could be the place where he plays the best rugby league.
Yeah, and I don't want to do too much disrespect to the Super League, but the competition as a whole is probably less challenging as well. So it's, in his position and at his calibre, he could come over and it could be an absolute walk in the park for him, We've seen quite a few players come over here. Granted, we've seen some that have come across for a bit of a payday, but I mean, touching wood, we've done quite well recently for having players come across and actually give their all at those later stages in their career. I can't remember the last time I watched Rovers play, Rovers win, and then 𝗕𝘂𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃 have his son on the pitch. He is on that pitch every single week, is Tom's lad. And it's so great to see. He's all kitted out in the same kit that his dad's wearing, with number 3 on the back and dad. And it's absolutely fantastic to see. And these players that are coming across from Australia and New Zealand and bringing the families with them, they are really buying into the belief of what's happening at Hull Kingston Rovers.
Yeah, you're right, Mikey. And Graham, we see, when we turn up at Craven Park, when we go to the away game, we see 80 minutes of rugby. Yeah, we pick up things on social media, in the press, etc. But there is so much behind that goes on to make these players be able to perform in that 80 minutes of rugby league. Family being there is such an important thing, isn't it? Especially when, and you know what? We'll talk about Sean Cadell very soon. The fact he wants to stay at the club shows you how important it is to be settled and be comfortable and enjoy your life here. I don't think we've seen a scenario like this since Justin Morgan was at the club, and he managed to bring in people like Clint Newton, Bengali, etc., Michael Dobson, and make them feel part of a real family feel, comfortable. Because these guys do come across from the other side of the world, and they come to apply the trade, but it's not just what they do on the pitch. It's everything behind it that makes them do what they do on the pitch.
Absolutely. And again, the easiest thing is to think of the training and the coaching and all that they get. But if they've got a settled home life behind them, then they've got nothing to worry about there. And it then allows them to concentrate fully on the 80 minutes or the rest of the week, which is their day job. You put yourself in the position where if you were having to go halfway around the world to earn a living and your family was staying at home, how would you feel after 3 months, 6 months, 9 months away from them with no physical contact with them, not being able to take your kids to school, not being able to hug your missus, whatever simple things go on in a family life that we take for granted, not having that ability to do so is going to give you a little bit of thought, and you are going to miss certain things about home because nothing is familiar around you. You've got no people that are familiar around you. The surroundings are all alien to you. So again, you can understand where it hasn't worked out for players before, where they have come over solo and left their families and children and relatives across, halfway across the world. And all of a sudden, it's a very short-term contract that they've had, and it's had to be they've had to be released early to pick that up again. So having that family bubble around them, that's normal, as in bring that over and replicate that here, experience a new lifestyle. And I've been listening to Willie Peters a lot lately, and he always talks about not just a player, but he talks about the person as well, and getting to know the person and understanding what makes the person tick. And if that's being in and around your family and the home environment, then it absolutely makes sense to replicate that home environment over here rather than, halfway around the world. And if that player can then become settled very, very quickly into life in East Hull, life at the club, life in new surroundings. Look, don't forget the kids are probably going to have to go to definitely going to have to go to new schools as well. So that's a huge upheaval in your home life as well. So having all that to process and deal with, you want that to settle down as quickly as possible so that they can then concentrate on, on what's going on. And I guess it's a related issue, but it's not directly related. I was reading or listening to an interview. It was with a soldier, and they used to get sent on tours for 6 months, 9 months, etc. No real contact with the family, and the precious time they had on the phone with the missus, they were just offloading all the problems about how bad the kids were. The washing machine's broke. I can't do this. I can't do that. And they're 3,000 miles away in Afghanistan or wherever, and could do nothing about it other than just getting offloaded with a load of trouble that they can do absolutely zero with, other than absorb it, think about it, and then it's going to affect the way that they perform as a soldier. So it's a similar analogy here, is that if you've got a settled home life, then you can just go ahead and do your job and then come home, deal with the family life and switch off from your job for a while. Yeah.
And so all I will say though, Graham, is that the last thing the East Hull Tourist Board needs is you comparing playing for Rovers to being in Afghanistan.
Well, we all know which side of the city I'm referring to, John.
But I take your point, and it is very interesting, and which leads me on to, I won't spend too much time on it, is Rhys Kennedy. I mean, he's copping some flack from certain quarters. I mean, absolutely crazy. I think the time he spent at the club so far is more than any forward has contributed to the Robins for a long time overseas, and I think we just need to cut him some slack. He's trying his hardest. You can see that he's almost trying too hard. I mean, Mikey, I'll bring you in. He's a player who's still young in terms of his position. He's still learning his trade. Willie Peters has seen enough in him to bring him over to East and think that he's going to have a real go for the Robins. We've seen glimpses of what he can do. Yes, we've seen some of his mistakes. We've seen him cop a ban, obviously, after the Batley game. But, I mean, some of the things I've seen said about him, he's unbelievable. And all I'd say is this isn't a moment to be picking people out and saying they don't do this, they don't do that. Yes, people earn good money and they come here and you expect them to be at the top level, but you've also got to appreciate that nobody comes here as a finished article sometimes. And Mikey, Rhys Kennedy, I don't understand why some people would call him out as much to the level that he has been by some quarters at the moment.
I think every club has got a section of fans that have to call something out. And when you look at the situation surrounding 𝗕𝗂𝗻𝗲𝗲 at the minute, there's not that much that you can pick holes at. Yeah. So when somebody knocks on a ball on the first carry or gives away a penalty, they're going to, unfortunately, be under the spotlight a little bit. And I think that's what's happened with Rhys Kennedy, that the players around him are performing to such a high level that he's the one that's getting picked out as a bit of a scapegoat. We've seen it quite frequently at this club, at other clubs. It just happens. And I don't necessarily agree with it. He's clearly trying his best. And when you look at it, you think back to 2020 and Sean Kenny-Dowell. Now, he played every game that year, but people was calling him left, right, and centre. What a waste of money. Why have we signed this guy? He's a has-been. 3 years later, look at him now. Yeah. You've just sometimes got to trust the process, stick behind your player, and watch him reap the reward.
Yeah, and Alan Atkinson on YouTube, he said, do you guys feel Aussie forwards are expected to be tackling, busting beasts? Solid players don't seem to get a fair crack of the whip for my money. Kennedy being the latest example of this. Leave it at that. Get behind the boys, cheer them on, and we'll see what happens at the end of the season. Right, talking of forwards, Graham, Tyler Dupree. I mean, you'll remember, Graham, going back to the 80s when Rovers used to play transfer fees for players. I mean, it's almost unheard of, isn't it, to be offering three-figure sums to sign a player, granted to get him out of his contract. The farce being that a club who were expecting or wanting their fans to take out loans to support the club and an APR of, 20%, and now turning down solid money while expecting the fans to take out loans, etc., etc. But Tyler Dupree, it'd be a fantastic addition to the Robins, wouldn't he? And also, you'd expect if they're paying a transfer fee, they're not going to let him stay there for the rest of the season. He's coming now.
Yeah, it's again another statement. I think going back to my point earlier on around the young upcoming British forward, recently broke into the England international scene, highly regarded at Salford club and within the game itself. So if we are able to pull that signing off, then yeah, that again I think is just going to add a lot of value to what we're all about next season, and potentially some part of this season if it tends to happen. Transfer fees, yeah, very rare in rugby. Everybody will know about the exorbitant transfer fees within the game of football, but within rugby, it's not very often that happens. Players just usually see out contracts and then move on after that, so that clubs don't have to pay transfer fees. And it's not a cash-rich game where transfer fees are getting waved around willy-nilly. And I saw a lot of the comments afterward about how, potentially with Frankie Holton, we were in the opposite position of having this happen to us, where the players had their head turned by somebody else, wants to get out. And look, if they don't want to be part of your club moving forward, what's the best thing to do? Is it to tie them down to the bench and sit them in the reserves and see out the contract and then potentially be a bad apple in the dressing room? Or is it to shake hands, wish them best, move on and then free up some space for your recruitment. And I guess you could argue both ways, which you'd want to do. But I think I would rather anybody who didn't want to be at my club not be there, so that they don't have that opportunity to cause issues. And I think there's a great example across the city where last year there was a bad apple in the camp that's now been moved on, and it just doesn't work when you've got that in the dressing room, and player power will win to an extent, but they're still there. You're still paying them the money. So yeah, if that's the case for Salford, they've got a decision to make how they handle it. But you can see that it can't really end well with the player sticking in that transfer request. He's made his intentions clear by doing that to the club, and what it's also done is put other clubs potentially on alert that he's available as a player, and they now know the price that was rejected, and it could give somebody else a clue to say, well, hang on a minute, if we stick 10% on that fee, are we likely to get it, or will Salford hold out at all and risk losing him in the future for zero, or do they cash in on that six-figure sum that you alluded to?
Yeah, and no doubt Salford have played a little bit of a game here by announcing that he's staying because they want to open a bidding war, and they've almost announced to say that we've had one bid, money talks, and we'll see who else comes in. I mean, Mike, if Tyler Dupree does come in, I mean, we're already operating with five props. Dean Hadley is now, a recognised prop. He's featured that prop for the last few games. It does beg the question, where does he fit in and who drops out? Because there's a fierce competition in them prop places at the moment. And Matty Staunton seems to be the one who seems to be edging his way back out of the team. And he's a player that many Rovers fans would like to see in the team. But if you add another prop into the current numbers who are playing there, you can only really play 4. I know Willie Peters played 5, but the maths just don't stack up, do they, about who will play there?
They don't, but when you look at it, the fact that we've only had 2 players that have played every game this year, we understand that rugby league is a squad game. Injuries are going to be picked up, suspensions are going to be picked up. It's probably important to have, the most and maximum amount of cover you can get. And what Rovers appear to be doing is pulling in players that are going to start games, which is pushing other players down the pecking order, rather than buffering from the bottom for somebody to step in when we need them. These are players that are coming straight in. You look at Corey Hall, he's come straight in and he's dislodged Sean Kenny-Dowell from his position, pushed him out to the wing, so Corey can play in his position. So we're being linked with players, and we're trying to sign these types of players that are going to exponentially improve our chances. Dean Hadley, as we've said, he's been used as a prop, but realistically, he's probably more of a second row. So would Dean Hadley just become the Frankie Holton replacement, and then would Tyler Dupree become the prop replacement? We've got versatility within those forwards in the sense of that they can play different positions. So I'm all for it. Get him in now.
Yeah. There's not many players who put a transfer request in and stay at a club, is he? So basically it comes down to who's the highest bidder. I think Graham's right. It'll come down to now. They've opened up the market. Who wants him? Who's prepared to stump up the money? Rovers have been the first ones in there with a bid. Really, there's only a handful of clubs at that who can afford transfer fees. You're looking at St Helens, Wigan, Warrington. I can't imagine maybe Leeds, maybe who it would be in the market. But we'll see how that pans out. It's very interesting, mate, that you mentioned Corey Hall. If we come on to the squad for our game against Wigan on Thursday, Corey Hall, of course, missed the Batley game. I think, am I right in thinking his partner gave birth, which is why he was given a little bit of time off, quite rightly.
There was slight illness as well, I think, Jono.
Illness, yeah. We all feel poorly after that news breaks and it all happens. Sleepless nights, etc., etc. But Corey Hall is back in the squad for the Wigan game, which is great news, as is Sue and Matty Parcell. Missing is George King. George King's injured. Kennedy's suspended. Squad news for the Wigan Warriors. I mean, they're missing quite a few players at the moment, aren't they? No sympathy whatsoever, of course. Ethan Hazard, Willie Icer, Kai Pierce-Paul, Jai Field, Mike Cooper, Brad Singleton. they want to right some wrongs after that opening day defeat. What was interesting, Mike, was that 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗏𝗲𝗃 said actually it was a bit of a punch to the nose, but now they've seen how well Rovers have done. Actually, Rovers were good value for the victory. And I suppose, in a way, that's a bit of a compliment to say that at the time it was a bit of a shock result, but in reality it wasn't, because Rovers have continued that progression. And when we play Wigan on Thursday night, there is absolutely nothing to fear.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Obviously, we can't take them for granted. Look, we are a club that have had countless injuries and gone and won games that we probably don't have any right to win. You know, you look at the Derby win last year, 36-4 at the MKM with 16 men. You look at the year before, the 19-0 at Warrington, when we had a host of players missing. You know, we are probably that team that go with a patched up side and put in a performance. So I would not put Wigan past doing that on Thursday. So it is important that we don't take them lightly. But, you know, there's probably not going to be many better opportunities for a club like ours to win a game and go second in the Super League.
Yeah, and it is. You know what? We're getting to the stage now where you do have to look at the league table. You know, you're looking at points and you're looking at the teams below us. I mean, if Rovers are third in the table on 16 points, of course, Wigan are second in the table on the same points, but they're second. Catalans are fourth in the table on the same amount of points. Any opportunity you get to take points off your rivals, Graham, it's a unique position, because when we talk about taking points off our opposition or teams around us, we're normally talking about it being the bottom of the table. We're talking about at the top. We're talking about taking 2 points off Wigan to put us second in the league, right? It's a unique position that we've not become accustomed to for a number of years. But what I would say is, Graham, is actually we're good value for our position in the league table. This Wigan team that are coming, there's nothing to fear. And if you look at Wigan's results recently, yes, they beat Leeds in the Challenge Cup. I mean, if you go back to that night at Warrington, I saw the score at half-time, Leeds Rhinos, Wigan Warriors. I couldn't believe how the game then panned out. Obviously, they've lost to relegation threatened 𝗕𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃. I mean, they're still not out of trouble yet. So it shows you, as a club, where Wigan are, and they're coming to Craven Park with a number of key players missing. Other than the fact that you should show respect to the opposition, there's nothing really left to fear, is there?
No, I think the league table by now, where are we now? Around 12, 13, something like that, that it's settling down. So the league table's not going to start lying after now all the way through. You are where you are because you deserve to be there. So yeah, you're right, and Mike's right as well. We shouldn't fear not just Wigan, but I don't think anybody coming to Craven Park now. We've got that mentality back as a fortress. We had a bit of a wobble earlier on in the season, as we know, and we lost a couple on the bounce at home. But it seems now that the Friday nights, Thursday nights, under the lights, the noise, the performance levels have been very, very good lately. And look, Willie Peters has said this a lot about letting other people worry about what we're all about and not necessarily focusing too much on that. Yes, look, they've got Bevan French in there, and young Wardle looked decent as well at the weekend. So they've got some potential straight threats, but with the quality of list of players that you've said that are not available for them at the weekend, in the next fixture, we've got to press home the advantage there. We've got to get onto them straight away, not give them any encouragement to get back into the game, and try, if possible, and control the game as we've shown we can do against good opposition. And there's nothing really there that's worrying in terms of it's Wigan, whereas in the past it's Wigan, we haven't got a chance. No, actually, they should be worrying more about us than we are about them.
I tell you what, Mikey, it's something that's gone under the radar a little bit, and it caused a bit of controversy at the time, was Rovers deciding to play Friday night fixtures. But the reasoning behind it was to give players recovery time, have a consistent calendar over the season. And what you would say is these Friday night fixtures are actually the home fixtures, and it's in line with a lot of what Super League teams are doing. But it is having a big impact on the team, and it is almost making like Friday nights like an event fixture. Like you want to go, and you don't see that as much. I mean, this is me talking, not necessarily talking for everybody else. You don't see that as much on a Sunday, but Friday night fixtures seem to be the big event.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. One of the comments that came out at the time was that no team has won a Super League playing their fixtures predominantly on a Sunday. And I've not fact checked this. I'm just going to throw an opinion out there. So, John, if you could delete this
spreadsheet right now.
If I'm wrong, you can delete this. But would I be right in thinking that Hull FC, Castleford Tigers, and Wakefield Trinity all predominantly like their games to be on a Sunday? And if you look at where those three teams are positioned in the Super League versus the rest of the competition, Friday nights do seem to be the way forward in terms of recovery and preparation.
Yeah,
I think with Hull, Mike, that might be because of the football and Saturday taking priority. So they'd always play the majority of the time they play the rugby after the football markings rather than the other way around. Not sure about Cass and Wakey, but I know from Leeds Rhinos' perspective, John, their fixture night is Friday night, and that's a commercial reason. As well, in the fact that all the entertaining spaces for the commercial sold out on a Friday evening. It's not the case on a Sunday for them, so it's a financial decision as well.
Yeah, all I'd say is that Hull could play any night of the week and still be shit. So I don't think when the play has got anything to do with it. But Friday night, Wigan Warriors. It's a fantastic occasion. Mikey, are you going to be on the pitch again?
Yeah, I'll be there already. If anybody believes in omens, I'll deliver you another omen-based stat for you. 25th of May 2018, Hull KR played Wigan Warriors at Craven Park. They beat them 24-8. On that day, I missed that game because I got married.
Oh.
5 years to the day, this Thursday, my 5th wedding anniversary, Hull KR host Wigan Warriors again. So I've got a big decision to make on Thursday, and that's what shirt do I wear to the game?
Well, talking of shirts, Mikey, I tell you what, let's give you a big plug, because the stuff you do with shirts, the history of the club that you, the story of the club you tell through the shirts, the players, etc., is fantastic. What have you got going on at the moment? Where can people find you? Tell us about the shirts you've got, and maybe a little sneak peek to what might be coming up in the future.
So obviously I do quite a lot based around Hull KR shirts, but my latest YouTube video, which you can find on YouTube, Hull KR shirts, I actually covered Hull Masters RLFC's shirt for the 2023-2024 season. Those guys actually reached out to me, loved what I did with talking shirts, and asked me if I would cover one of their shirts. Seen really, really good uptake in views on that. I think it's pushing 100 views already. Now, my videos only average about 50 views a fortnight. So for me to get nearly 100 views in sort of the first sort of 5 or 6 days is absolutely brilliant. So it's great to see that people are buying into things like that. With regards to shirts, I'm always on the lookout. I've got a few little hidden gems that are up my sleeve. I've got some absolutely fantastic finds that are going to come out in the next sort of couple of months. I'm keeping them under my hat because it's difficult for me to find shirts that come from past gone eras where it's difficult to find. So I've got some final shirts to share. So they're going to come out, but I have got something next to me, and I won't going to show you, but you've tempted me into it. But I've recently picked up this one this week, a shirt that will be obviously no longer required. Frankie Holton's diamond shirt. Frankie's a really good guy. At the back end of last season, I put some pictures up online of his home shirt from last year. And the shirt that I actually had was the only home shirt that was available. And unfortunately for Frankie, he didn't get it and I did. So his missus reached out to me and said, look, he's absolutely gutted that he hadn't got one of his home shirts from his debut season in the Super League. Would we be able to buy this shirt off you? Now, I'm not in the market for sort of selling shirts back to players. I just think that's incredibly wrong. At the end of the day, it's their history and their heritage. I'd got that shirt for a donation to charity. So I donated it back to Frankie's girlfriend. Not long after, I got a message off Frankie thanking me and said he would send me a shirt at the end of the 2023 season. Now, I didn't quite envisage him leaving partway through the year, but he was a man of his word, and he delivered that to me, which was very, very kind of him.
Yeah, and you know what? People a bit like, people leaving, etc. Mark of a man is to pay respects back to the supporters, do what you do, that's how you do it, isn't it? People move on, contracts wise, big decisions to make. And Frank Holton, fantastic that he's been able to do that, because not only has he done that for himself, he's been able to give a bit back to you as well. And the history of the club is still being told through the shirts, and that's fantastic, isn't it? And where can people find you, Mike, if they want to find out more about 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗧 shirts?
So across social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, probably most active across there. But I've also got a website as well, 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗧𝗿𝗂𝗀𝗍𝑐𝑜.uk. A lot of the information is all kind of biographied on there. I try and keep as much of the information sort of visible and accessible. I make no money out of what I do. In fact, it costs me one hell of a lot to be able to kind of keep this kind of content rolling. But it's something that I'm just so passionate about. I've got a couple of really good sponsors in Steve Leeming Plant. He donates to me the shirts that Sean Kenny Dowell and Jordan Abdul wear year on year. And also 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗱𝗏𝗁𝗁, which is Andrea Bruce and her husband Andrew. They currently sponsor 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗱𝗏𝗁𝗁, which is where the 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗱 shirt behind me came from. They passed that on to me as a thank you for sort of promoting their cottage. So if anybody's looking for a cottage in Lincoln, make sure you go and check those guys out at 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗱𝗏𝗁𝗁.co.uk, because they've got they've got a lot of support for 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗱𝗏.
Yeah, and as Graham found out, make sure that when you do go on Google, you don't type in cottage in, because you can get found out, and a lot of mistakes, can't you, Graham?
That knock on the door, Graham, that you never want to.
Yeah, you're right. But Graham, do you know what? Let's pay tribute to Mike, because it is so important that people like Mike do what they do. Mike's already mentioned Roger Pugh, that club historian. These are the things that in years gone by, people remember, because people have took the effort, the care, the time to preserve the history of the club. And what I would say is, maybe for 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗱𝗏𝗄𝗏 Rovers for too long, we've looked back at our history for lots of good reasons, but it's important that people do, because if we don't, you can lose so much in time.
Yeah. Absolutely, it is incredible work, and as Mike says, he doesn't do it for the financial reward of it. It's because he loves the club and wants to to preserve that history, and obviously share it with other people as well, and encourage people to to take part in it as well. So as a fan, you always live in the here and now of, right, what's the next game, who we're playing, where we're at. But it's really important as a club to engage with the history, and find out some interesting stuff that Mike's thrown out there tonight about stats, etc. If that's your thing, great. If it's if it's the shirts that are out there, great. There's lots of other things away from the actual playing of the game that form part of the club. And it's a shame we didn't have Craig on tonight from the foundation, because they again are part of the club that do great work in spreading the word of the club. But I'm sure hopefully we'll get to hear about that one day. And it's just another thing about being connected with the club. There's so many layers to it. We've talked about layers before, and history is vital. We all refer back to do you remember that game when? And whatever it was, and I remember the shirt we were wearing in that particular game, or I remember the scores of that game, and you still talk about it years and years afterwards in the pub, or if something happened within that game and you were there and you saw it and witnessed it, it forms part of your memory and association with the club. So it's absolutely vital, that the work that Mike does, and others who do similar things, and certainly that all the stats and historians out there as well, in preserving what is an absolute goldmine of information that needs to be shared, so other people can enjoy it as well, and learn more about the club we all love.
Yeah, fantastic. And you know what? We're talking about history. I think we are making history, because I think this is the most live viewers we've ever had on the Red Robin podcast. I can see the numbers. Huge numbers who listen on the podcast. So if you're listening in your kitchen, in your car, wherever you are, and you listen to this on podcast, thank you so much. People watch on YouTube and Facebook. I know for a fact this is record numbers. So we are talking about history. And you know what? We've gone over 60 minutes. It does me head in every time, because I aim to do 60 minutes. I don't know why, because I know we always overrun. So I'm going to keep you listening just for a little bit longer, or viewing for a little bit longer. Right. Peta Hiku, New Zealand International. I posed a question on Twitter. Mikey, who was the greatest Kiwi player in a Rover shirt you've ever seen? And Graham, who was the greatest Kiwi player in a Rover shirt you've ever seen?
Man has to be Sean Kenny-Dowell, just based on obviously what I've seen. Obviously, I started going to Rovers in 2009, but I'm sure that Graham's going to be able to pull out some fantastic names that we'll have all have heard of that he's witnessed during that key period in the 1980s.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Gary Prom.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what the question I posed on Twitter was, because what I'm really appreciative of is that through the podcast, through social media, etc., we cover so many people who have watched the club through so many years. So the question I posed was, who's the greatest Kiwi in the 80s, the 2000s, and currently? And you know what? I think the single biggest answer anyway across all of them was, you know what, Gary Prom anyway. And you know what? I have reached out to him to get him on a heritage cast. He owns a garage in New Zealand. He's a mechanic. He actually owns a garage, and I'm waiting. I'm still hanging on that email for him to come back to me. So hopefully one day we could get Gary Prom on. But guys, it's been a really, really interesting podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope the viewers, the listeners appreciate your input. It's been really enjoyable. Of course, Rovers go into our round. Mikey, you're the stats man. Are we round 14 now?
13, I think.
13, unlucky for some, hopefully not unlucky for the Robins. Mikey Lewis and 𝗕𝘃𝗏𝗏 are our only ever-present players. It's going to be great to see where they line up on Friday. We've not even talked about what the team might line up, might be on Thursday night, because you've got Litton, Lewis, Parcell, of course, is back. Our bench, what could that look like? But it's going to be really interesting. Like I said, thank you so much for people who are tuning in. This has been the Red Robin Podcast Weekly, which is powered by Budget Ties Auto Centre and 360 Chartered Accountants. And for everyone who's listening and viewing, just remember, live, love, laugh and be happy.